So today we'll be looking at dynamic open back flagship headphones. And on my table here is some of the most expensive, in fact, headphones that you can get in the market. They are dynamic open back. Now, why dynamic open back is because usually dynamic open backs are tied with certain qualities, especially like in the bass region, how they are more punchy. And then, of course, they do represent some of the biggest sounding headphone also, especially when it comes to, like, say, the Atrium and the HD800S. So, I'm just keeping this to dynamic headphone because, there are some inherent advantage in planar magnetics, but dynamic headphones have also a space in the high-end space. By the way, most of the high-end headphones are planar magnetics. So actually, it's getting lesser and lesser headphones in this market. They are dynamic and in the above 2000 USD bracket. So let's take a look at these three here. Now, I have the Atrium open. You can see this is the Atrium open here. Mine is a little bit old. It's a second-hand set, and you can see some wear and tear on the cups and, of course, the pads themselves. Then this is my relatively new purchase composer. I really love this and I purchased it. This comes in about, I think, 2,600 over USD or about 4,000 Sing dollars from Jaben. And well, they look really good, they wear really nice, and they are really easy to drive. And last but not least, the very famous and the flagship for dynamic headphones for a pretty long time. This is the Focal Utopia. You can see this Utopia here. It is, I guess, pretty much more modern. Now look like, if you look at all the patterns and stuff. And it is, I guess, the most inflexible headphone here. The sizing is kind of inflexible in many ways. But if not, this is one of the most expensive headphones you can get in the market. In Singapore, it's actually more affordable, usually coming in at 5,000 plus Sing dollars. But in the US, it's about 5,000 USD, making the Singapore purchase a much more worthwhile purchase. I mean, Singapore usually comes like 5,000 plus Sing dollars, definitely below 6,000 Sing dollars. Compared to the US of 5,000 USD, this is a bargain here. Now, bargain, of course, is not the word you use with any of these headphones here. They are really expensive. And for the Utopia, I will thank Jaben for loaning me this copy so I can do this comparison. While the rest, the other two, is something I purchased myself. So let's do this comparison here, and I was thinking really how to do it. So what I did was to listen 3 songs of relatively different genre. Then I give some thoughts, write down some notes, but I won't bore you with all those things. I'll just get straight to the point on various parameters on how I feel about the headphones. I will just want to upfront tell you that there is no clear winner, and I think through this video you can understand what are the things that I feel is better on one headphone versus the other, and it may help you make a better decision, especially if you really want a dynamic headphone for whatever reason at the high end. I mean, there are planar magnetics, but they sound a little bit different. So without wasting time, let's talk about them. So I want to first touch on comfort, and comfort is of course subjective, depends on your head and everything, but generally, I think that the composer is the most comfortable. Firstly, it has the most motion. You can see here, this is the composer. It can bend the most ways, and this thing can be adjusted. It's quite easy, and it's also the lightest of the bunch. So if you ask me, I think there is no dispute here, at least for me, that the composer is the most comfortable headphone. Now, on second place, I will have to say that the Atrium is more comfortable than the Utopia, purely because it is more adjustable once again, and it has thicker pads. But no, it is bigger, it's bulkier, and it's more troublesome and cumbersome to wear compared to the composer. While the Utopia has just very limited control. So if comfort is your number one priority, I'll say as Utopia actually scored the lowest here. So for this one, I will give it 3, 2, 1 in terms of scoring itself. Utopia scoring only 1 point. Now, next we'll talk about the bass. Now, bass-wise, when it comes to sound, bass, the Utopia takes the cake. It is the most in quantity and also the most in quality. It is punchy, it's quick, it's responsive, and it has a lot of quality. When I was listening to tracks such as Suzume, the bass texture when it kicks off is really great on the Utopia. It's like unbeatable quality of bass, responsiveness, and texture there. And also when I was listening to Heartbeat, there was this bass that is always hitting behind as part of the beat of the song. And the Utopia just renders it beautifully, beautifully, both in quantity and quality, responsiveness, speed, texture. Utopia takes the cake. 3 points for Utopia on bass. Now, when it comes to the rest, I would say as it depends on your preference. I would say as for bass, I find that the Atrium Open has very nice punchy bass, but the quantity is very little. While for the Composer, it has good amount of quantity, but the quality-wise, it feels a bit more rounded off at the bass itself. So if you ask me to rate the bass, I would say as I'll rate the Utopia number 1 at 3 points, Atrium as 2 points, and Composer at 1 point. Because to me, at this price point, it's really not about just the quantity, it's really the quality of the bass, and I think the Atrium does it better than the Composer itself. Next, when it comes to energy of the song itself, how energetic is the song, how fast, fun, everything you can think of that gives an exciting experience. And I would say as for energy-wise, the excitement-wise, the Utopia is the most exciting sounding. It is very mid-centric, very exciting there, very powerful there. I was actually thinking whether should I give Composer as number 1, because Composer has a very nice amount of high energy, but it's mainly just high energy, very airy, very energetic when there are highs. But the moment there's no highs, the Utopia is better. So if you ask me overall energy-wise, the Utopia is more energetic than the Composer, though the Composer has higher treble energy and higher mids energy. The high mids energy is a lot better on the Composer. While the Atrium is just relaxed. Come on, let's chill. So it gets 1 point for this. Next, when it comes to vocals-wise, I was thinking very hard how to give the points for this. I still have to put a point there, purely for this video. But personally, I would say that I prefer the Atrium because it's just smoother, big sounding, and overall very clear. I do find the Composer as a very much more brighter, I would say as if you are looking for a brighter vocal, for an airier vocal, then the Composer is better. Now, the Focal Utopia's vocal is a bit more rounded, more full-bodied. So, when you're listening to Heartbeat or my second track, when I was listening to Ado's Backlight, Ado's voice on Focal is very powerful. But the thing is that, power is one thing, I just want a more overall clean, clear, and airy experience because for the track I listened to. So with all of that considered, I have to give the Atrium number 1, the Composer number 2, and the Focal number 3, purely because the only thing going for Focal's vocal is just more powerful. That's about it. While for Composer is nice, clean and airy, and can be very soft, also very quiet, while Atrium is just big sounding vocals that are very smooth, very enjoyable, and still retain good amount of details. It is the most beautiful vocals if you are looking for vocals itself. Next, when it comes to soundstage, I would say as the Atrium has the biggest soundstage. This is not a fight. The Atrium soundstage trumps everything here. I'm not sure, I don't have the HD 800S, but I think the Atrium Open, at least from so far, is the biggest sounding headphone I own. Next, at second place, I would say as the Composer. Now, I would say as both of these headphones, right, do not have like super huge soundstage. They have a sound that just surrounds you, but the amount of air and extension inside the Composer makes it sound a lot more bigger. It's like endless space. While the Focal feels like after you reach the edge, there is like a wall. It feels like it ends with the bubble itself. So soundstage wise, the Composer and the Focal, even though it sounds roughly the same size, when you listen very carefully, the Composer just feels like it extends infinitely, while the Focal Utopia just feels like it ends at a certain edge itself. So Composer number 2 and Utopia number 3 when it comes to soundstage. Now, I wanted to actually go into more parameters like separation and stuff, but I think that, I should just weave it also in the soundstage. And that's also one of the reasons why the Atrium is number 1, because the Atrium just feels a lot more separated and better positioning, while the Composer comes second also in terms of separation and positioning. While I find that the Utopia just feels like a bubble around your head. So no, to me at least, I just don't feel like the separation and the positioning is very, very good on the Utopia. I mean, it's still good for a headphone of its class. It's just not the greatest among the three here. Now, next, when it comes to timbre, realism, accuracy, whatever you want to call it, tonality, timbre-wise, I'll say the Focal Utopia is the best in timbre. It feels the most natural and normal sounding. While the Composer feels like a very high-end recording, and the Atrium just kind of throws whack to it and say, come on, I'm going to put you in a very big stage and let's go. So it sounds big, but it sounds not very great. It feels like there's some dampening or some sound tinting in there. Overall, I would say as timbre-wise, the Utopia is the best at 3 points. I don't even want to argue on that. And then followed by the Composer, which I feel like is high quality recording. And then the Atrium, which obviously kind of tints the sound, in whatever way they want. It's nice to listen, but it just tints the sound. And then I want to talk about details, because that's also, details and clarity. I will just combine both of them. In terms of detail and clarity, I would say as the Composer is the best for a few reasons. Firstly, it has the most sparkly treble, which helps separate instruments very well. Secondly, when it comes to soundstage, in between both the Focal and the Atrium, and then separation is also between the Focal and the Atrium. So as such, the instruments are well separated, things are well spaced apart, and then combined with the enhanced treble, it feels like it's the most clearest and the most detailed among all three of them. So if you are going for clarity and detail, the Composer is number one. Now, number two, when it comes to details, I would say as I'll go to the Focal. Focal feels like it's rendering all the details properly. However, because it doesn't feel like it has as much treble energy, and of course the soundstage is a bit smaller, it just doesn't feel as clean, clear, and detailed as the Composer itself. The Atrium just forgoes this whole detail part of things. I mean, there is details when you listen carefully, but overall it feels like one big music with no focus on details on there. Not that it doesn't have details. Once again, if you go see my Atrium review itself, the Atrium is just not focused on that. It's just more focused on the general sound itself. And this is where the last parameter comes in, the ease of listening. And Atrium takes the cake. It's just the easiest to listen. What I said just now, remember, is like throwing the song into a big stage and just play it. Exactly, that's how Atrium feels. It feels very calm. It feels very big. It feels like it surrounds you, the sound. It feels like one continuous, effortless music playing into your ears. The Atrium is just the easiest to listen among all three of them. Followed by the Utopia as second. It is easy to listen. If you ask me long-term listening, I think the Utopia is probably way easier to listen than the Composer. And purely because the Composer has a lot of high energy. And this high energy at times can be a bit fatiguing over a period. While the Utopia doesn't have that. It is like big, powerful, but generally very smooth sounding still. While in the Composer, you will focus a lot of the details, a lot of the treble, which can be fatiguing over time. Now that I have went through a lot of parameters, let me show you a summary table of them. And I will say as when it comes to points, where first place is 3 points and last place is 1 point, they all score the same, 16 points. Now you may be thinking, I'm gaming the system, right? Exactly, that's what I'm doing. I'm gaming the system. Because the more parameters I add, there is something for everyone. That's how I feel. It has just something for everyone. If I go further and take out separation and positioning, then Atrium gets a bit more point. If I go and have a treble line, the Composer takes the point. And then if I go about having a line where I talk about transient response, Utopia takes the cake for that. So if I was to go longer and longer and longer, it depends on where I want to stop. But I would say as the point difference between them are still going to be really close. Like each of them specialize in something. And there is just no outright winner. All three of them. But if you ask me, which do I prefer, right? To me, I favor very short bursts of listening. As such, to me, I think the Composer is the best. It's the easiest to wear, easiest to get on, and it's clean and clear. And even though it has a lot of high energy, I don't listen long enough to get fatigued by it. But if I was to listen for a very long period of time, I would choose either the Composer or the Atrium, purely because they are easy to wear And not only that, I think the Atrium is a lot more pleasing to listen for long runs, but the composer is just easier to wear, easier to deal with. Now, where does it leave the Focal itself? I think Focal is very great for any song that requires a lot of energy in the midst. The Focal just feels like it has a lot of energy there, and not only that, as I said just now, it has the best timbre. So if you listen across multiple tracks, I think the Focal Utopia just plays all of them pretty well. Very little sibilance, and it just sounds right for most tracks I have thrown at it. It sounds more right than the rest. So if you are actually going for the most purest form of sound, I think the Focal Utopia is the best. Because of, the transient response, the punchy bass, yet still maintaining a very good timbre, the best timbre, the most accurate sound here. It's just a case where if you look at other parameters, then maybe you will favor the rest. And I just don't want to go on and on and on. I would just say that all three of them are great. Which you prefer is really up to you. And, I can live with any one of them. But if I have to make a choice, I will probably choose the Composer, purely for easy to wear, good airy sound, and pretty much easy to drive to. And that's about it. Which headphone do you prefer? Do write down in the comments below. I'm interested to know. Do like and subscribe if you want more such content. And once again, I want to thank Jaben for loaning me this copy of the Utopia. I'm returning it soon because they're going to have an Adelphi show this weekend. I'll return it soon, and I have to say I will miss it a little bit because it sounds very different from the other two. And I'll see you guys again next time. Bye bye.